Hello and welcome to Creaking Shelves. Today we're going to be talking about our most anticipated games of 2021. And far more importantly, Robin's back on the channel!
Yay! I'm out of hibernation, I'm out of prison, and back
Prison.
in the real world.
Yes, free to roam as you will about your flat.
I know,
and no further.
I never realised how big the world was until 2020. Wow.
Yeah, you have been in the background doing the video editing on what little I've been able to produce over the last year.
Well, I'm glad you
But
did
it's
it,
not-
because I haven't been able to do anything.
Yes. Oh, dear. Of course, one of the interesting things about this whole situation is that, like, unlike normally when you're talking about anticipated games, you'll be thinking about, them being released as physical games. But a lot of these, I noticed when I was going through the list, you can probably play on one of the digital platforms already, which does make it a bit strange. I've not played any of the ones that are on my list.
No, me neither.
Cool. So these are still anticipated games, even if we could, after we record, go and play at least a couple. Right, let's get started. Robin's number 5.
My number 5 is Fairy Tale Inn. This caught my eye because at a first glance it looks a little bit like Connect 4. The designer of it, or one of the designers, is Paolo Mori, I think, who did Pandemic Fall of Rome.
Right.
He also did that pirate game, Libertalia,
Sure.
I think it was.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah, which was really well received, although I haven't played that. So this caught my eye, actually, because at first I was like, it's just, who's bringing out a version of Connect 4? That's just a bit lazy. But then I saw his name and I thought, okay, I'll have a look into it. And the theme is fairy tales. So you've got Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs, Big Bad Wolf, stuff like that. And the idea is it's a 2-player game, which is something that I admit I prioritise when putting this list together. Because
yes, that was very intelligent. I did not think to do that.
Not every game on my list is 2 players, but that was something I was thinking of because the past year has taught me that big player games are just not always the best thing to have. It also is a nice friendly theme, fairy tales. It's not particularly grim. Ha 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 ha. But so the idea of the game is that it's basically a Connect 4 board, vertical board, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the actual name for that is. And you've got tokens, and each token is a nice little artwork with a colour side and a monochrome side. And both sides are artwork of a fairy tale character, but the board is actually shaped like a hotel. It's the inn. There's a deck of cards, and each card is a character, and each character has scoring rules. So tiles will score if they are next to another fairy tale character. So I think, for example, Three Little Pigs will score if they're not near the Big Bad Wolf, for example.
Classic.
And you've got 2 players, and each player chooses, I think, 2 characters that are going to be scoreable in the game. And then you put the tokens of those characters in a big bag, you shuffle them all up, and then you take turns blind drawing a token from the bag and then placing it on the board, and then they score based on their positioning. And there's also, and this is what I thought was particularly interesting, certain holes on the vertical board are marked as scoring holes, and you have to get certain tiles, like Pinocchio, for example.
I've heard of some scoring holes before.
So into those scoring holes you insert your Pinocchio, and then you might get points. And I think that's adds an extra layer of challenge, obviously, because at the same time, because the other player knows what those characters are, with these double-sided tokens, they could try to mess up your strategy. And I think that's kind of cool. So it's a nice, simple 2-player game with a fun theme, and because of the designer, I actually think it could be quite good.
Well, a good name gives you a bit of reassurance, right? So, yeah, sounds interesting.
What's your number 5?
All right, my number 5 is a game called Canvas, which caught my attention solely because of what components it uses. Maybe that's similar to Fairy Tale Inn for you. Okay. So it's about paintings, about making paintings, and it uses those kind of acetate cards, like in Mystic Veil or Gloom.
Yeah.
Printed on them is like sections of paintings, like a background and a few foreground elements, and you stack them up to create a painting. And then the cards at the bottom also have like little scoring symbols. And so the kind of puzzle mechanical element of it is that as you build the paintings, you might cover up symbols as you place the extra layers on top.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which sounds really quite neat. I think the rest of the game's fairly, kind of standard stuff. Kind of, you've got a card draft to get these painting segments, which works identically to Century Spice Road and Majesty for the Realm, which is fine because I really like that card draft, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the scoring is your kind of usual set collection, but that central element sounds, that physical thing and how that relates to what it is you're doing, the painting. It's great.
It sounds really elegant and really fun.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a fairly, light game, so less than an hour, so it doesn't need to be that complex or clever to be really neat. So, number 4.
Okay, so my number 4 is something that I've not come across before, not something I've seen games try to do. Board games try to do, because it's Cantaloupe Book 1, Breaking into Prison.
Breaking into Prison.
Yeah. And it sells itself with a really intriguing premise, which is it's a point-and-click adventure video game, but in the form of a board game. And
right.
Yeah, and it presents itself as a book. So a nice, looks pretty thick too. And you go through it and you've got pictures of landscapes with items you can look at, and I think items are numbered, and there's a massive index, and there are characters, and there are conversation trees. You can choose your response, and your response will then determine their response, and hopefully it's easy to play. And that's why it's number 4 on my list, because it looks really fun, and it's part of a planned trilogy of games, story-driven, and it says that you can play
all like the same story, or
apparently with the same main character involved. I don't know what the story for this one is, but it's obviously something to do with breaking into prison, because that's the subtitle. And it's got a nice cartoony style, and it looks like it's the kind of game that you could play on your own or with a huge number of people in a party. That could get messy, but that's a fun idea.
Cute.
It's mostly just...
I guess that's something you could play over Skype as well.
Actually, I don't see...
If everyone had a copy, I guess. Is it just a book? Not to be dismissive in any way.
Well, that's the thing. Like, at the moment, it doesn't seem to be anything besides a book. It's a game that can be played with many people or a few, and like I say, possibly
and just
over
one
video calls as well.
So, yeah.
What's your number 4?
All right. My number 4 is a big Kickstarter full of plastic and cards and bits and pieces called Frostpunk.
Frostpunk.
Yeah.
I was expecting a different Frost game.
I'm sure you were. Yes. So no, this is Frostpunk. So it's based on the video game of the same name, I believe. It's from the same people who did This War of Mine.
That was a game. That was an experience.
Yes, I think the video game's by the same team as did that, and then the board game adaptation is by the same team who did the board game adaptation of This War of Mine.
Okay.
I hope I've got all that right. The gist is you're in a kind of iced over post-apocalyptic world. You're the kind of last human city, and you've got this big, kind of clinging to the sides of this giant generator you're just trying to keep running, producing heat.
Okay.
And you're kind of building up the city around that, and doing the kind of classic resource gathering stuff that goes along with these kind of survival games. And also, which kind of ties into this, this War of Mine thing, you have those kind of moral quandaries. to face through events, and you will enact laws. So it's like you're not just building the city, but the people of the city are supposed to have a big influence on the game, and you have an influence on them, as in their mechanical representation at least, by enacting laws. So kind of, the example that they push pretty hard is, will you introduce child labour into your society, or will you take the moral high ground of giving them some brief respite before they turn into adults?
Would you say that you are more or less likely to indulge in child labour now that you're a father yourself?
Well, I was thinking about this, actually. I was thinking my daughter, well, I mean, she's very good at destroying jigsaws and, any kind of block tower that you make. So maybe there's room for her on the demolition crew. Yeah. She could do a good job. Of course, there is the risks of introducing child labour that, if you're putting them into dangerous work conditions, they might get hurt, and that does have an impact on morale and things like that.
Oh, it's morale when you can.
The game, apparently, it's the lower the morale, there's different effects that'll trigger.
I do love that kind of thing. That is very cool. Is this a potentially ongoing campaign type of game, or is it just a long session game? Because it sounds quite involved.
Ooh, what a good question. Yes, scenario mission campaign game. Yes. So whether there's an ongoing story or whether it's just, you can always dream of playing through this entire campaign, which you never do, but you at least get to play the first scenario a few times,
I hope you get further than that, though. You don't want to fall into the classic trap of you play the first couple of scenarios dozens of times because you never play with the same group of people.
Yeah, well, that's not likely to happen now, is it? Hey, thank you, COVID. Yeah. Woo. Onwards to number 3.
So my number 3 continues the trend of picking fairly easy games to play. Clearly it's been a hard year and I don't want anything challenging. It's Kohaku, I think is how you say it. Japanese word.
Okay. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
Great. I'm going to go with Kohaku, and if anyone knows how to pronounce that correctly, let us know in the comments, please. And again, I'm going to mispronounce a word here, but it's to do with a koi pond? Koi pond?
Koi, yeah, the fish.
Koi, okay, good. Koi. Yes, and it just looks like it's a nice tile placement game. And you have lots of beautiful artwork of fish on tiles, and you place them on a board, and when the board is full, you score based on the placement of your tiles, and your tiles score naturally on colourful flowers matching colourful fish. And simple other more complex things like butterflies have to match fish as well, but they have to have line of sight, and presumably that's determined by orthogonal positioning.
You ask them, can you see the fish?
Yeah, just stroke the tongue.
Yeah.
The answer's always no. Nobody scores with butterflies. It's a trick.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just looks like a nice. It sells itself as a gentle, peaceful game. It looks like it actually is, and it's 1 to 4 players. You can play it solo, or if you're lucky enough to have a partner in these times, you can play it with a partner. And yeah, it just looks like a nice, simple tile drafting game and pretty artwork. And actually, I have to admit, I was inspired to pick this after you introduced me to Wingspan, Matt. Because
yes,
a very good game and a very pretty game. And I thought, I like pretty games. So
yes,
Kohaku.
Nice, calming nature things.
Yeah. So what's your number 3?
Okay, my number 3 is going into a classic board gaming theme of Industrial Revolution with called Furnace.
Oh wow, that sounds ominous and serious.
Actually, it's considering it's about the Industrial Revolution, it is also a very pretty game. Never have smog belching factories been granted such picturesque cards. It's very impressive. So
it's great for history lessons, is what you're saying.
Yes. If you want a truly rose-tinted view of the past, of Britain's past, this is the card game for you. So for all you Brexiteers out there, this is the card game you should be getting. So it's auction game and engine building game. So you've got these kind of cards for all these different factories and places that are being auctioned off, and it's quite an interesting auction mechanic. So rather than just straight up buying or bidding money, each player has a set of 4 tokens, numbered 1 to 4 and of different colours.
Okay.
And you'll have a set of cards up for each auction, and you'll place these tokens out. You can't have the same number or colour on any multiple of the same on any of the individual cards, and the player who put the highest number in will win it, but everyone else who has tokens on there will get to trigger the effect of the card and also trigger their abilities separately. So there's kind of like a kind of, sometimes you might want to win, sometimes you might actually not want to win. And the higher number you put in when you lose, the more powerful the effect of the action is. So instead of getting 1 resource, you'd get 3 resources, say. And some of them are conversion abilities as well. So yeah.
That sounds like a really tough game to play strategically.
Yes, indeed. I quite like auction games. For some reason, I know some people don't. But I mean, there's a huge variety of auction. Auction covers a lot of quite different mechanics, and this one I've not come across before, I don't think. It sounds really neat, and it's the designer, whose name I've forgotten, but we can put up. He did a game called Smartphone Inc. A year or 2 ago, which was very well received. I haven't had a chance to play it, sadly, but I've heard very good things about that. So his run continues, and it's not too long either. It's only supposed to take about 60 minutes again. I apparently that and camp thinking shorter games good as well nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Weirdly, there are demands on your time.
I know. Need to get her out of the demolition squad as soon as possible, really, don't I? Number 2.
Number 2, yeah. So my number 2 may actually surprise you, because I'm breaking from the theme of nice, friendly artwork and very simple gameplay and very few players, kind of, by going with The Thing, the board game.
The Thing?
The Thing, yes. And
have you forgotten its name already?
I've forgotten it already. Yeah, that board game, that thing,
that thing board game. Yes.
And I backed this on Kickstarter, so it had to be on my list because this is officially a licensed game, and this is not even the first of those, because there's I think there was a 2014 card game, and then there was the 2017 game Infection Outpost 31.
Yes.
That's been out of print, and I was wondering, why is that out of print? Oh, it's because someone else has got the license. And that's what they're doing with it now. And there was even a non-licensed game called Who Goes There, which came out a couple of years ago, and it's just had another Kickstarter for its 2nd edition, based on...
how did you pick this one then?
How did I pick this one?
Over all the others? I mean, obviously one's out of print, but...
Yeah, well, one's out of print. But this one looks genuinely like it might be 3rd time lucky for official licensed games based on The Thing. It looks really...
Have the other ones not been good? I've not played them.
The others have been okay. This version of the board game promises something interesting, because it's like Resistance. You have a team leader, everybody puts a card in to vote for what they're doing that turn, and the team leader shuffles the deck and then reveals the cards, and if somebody's put a bad card in, then obviously someone's The Thing.
Yes.
Except the big thing that separates this from previous versions of the game is that a player who is The Thing, the alien, can voluntarily expose themselves. That'd be great.
Robin, you can always do that at a game night. No, there's nothing stopping you.
But now this gives me an excuse.
Apart from propriety and wanting to be invited back.
Now we can reveal our tentacles, and it's part of the game. So you can actually, if you are the infected player, if you are an alien, you can say, "I'm the thing," and then you become a playable alien on the board, causing all kinds of problems. Yeah, but
there's a board.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous-looking board. Miniatures, at least if you've got the Kickstarter. I think you have to buy the miniatures as a separate expansion pack. Otherwise, it's standees, which are equally beautiful, to be honest. The artwork is really cool, and it's very faithful to the 1982 film, of which I'm a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another beautiful-looking game, well-produced, and it's got this great mechanic of not just a traitor, but a traitor who can then reveal themselves to cause problems. But, of course, they can infect other players. So a traitor could reveal themselves in order to draw attention away from the other non-human players, the other traitors in the midst. And what's nice about this is that you can have 8 players, which is much better than who goes there with this limitation to 4 players. And you can, if you want, and this is very important, and this is probably the reason I backed this game, because in the midst of a pandemic I was like, should I really back an 8-player board game? There is a solo co-op mode for 1 to 3 players. So you play against the board in that situation. And to be honest, I don't know how well that will work. They released some draft rules, but they said when they released them that these are just draft rules, and it's a bit in flux.
Look, it's perfectly reasonable thing, a perfectly reasonable psychological response to this pandemic, to buy something you definitely can't use properly for a long time, even in the hope that the anticipation of being able to play it properly. Even
if it's not perfect, it looks like it's definitely going to be the best version of this game that has existed. And it's got
Are they using artwork or stills from the film?
They're using artwork.
Thank God.
Yes.
Is it good artwork? Suddenly having flashbacks to legendary deck builders.
Yeah. No, it actually is good artwork. It's nowhere near as consistent as the legendary games.
Okay.
They got one artist doing all the artwork, and they're a very good artist. Thankfully. And it's
excellent.
Lovely miniatures as well. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is called Mercado de Lisboa, which I think is how the Portuguese pronounce it. Right. And this is the new Vital Lacerda game. But unlike normal, so Vital Lacerda is very famous for producing exceedingly heavy games in very large boxes. Exceedingly heavy Euro games. But this is supposed to only play in 30 to 45 minutes.
What?
Yeah! It's a light, he says hesitantly. Light game from Vital Lacerda. So this is so it's based on a previous game of his called Lisboa. Which was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Yeah. It had, amongst its many, many, many mechanics, a system of kind of building buildings on a grid. So you would claim a spot on the grid, and the value of that spot, in terms of the cost to build, would depend on how many other people had already kind of built in that row and column of the grid. Right. And how that row/column scored depended on a kind of second class of building that could be built around the edge of the grid. So kind of they're called public buildings in Lisboa. One public building to each row and one to each column. So effectively, wherever you built, you would hope to be scoring off of 2 buildings, but not necessarily, because not all the public buildings could get built, and various other things. Yeah. So this Mercado de Lisboa is just taking that part of Lisboa, effectively,
yeah,
and setting it in a famous market in Lisbon. Yeah, in fact, that is basically the entire
okay,
game now,
that's the
right?
game.
It's stripped away just like a huge amount of other mechanics, just to focus on this one element, and with whatever systems there are for the basic economy of building, how you build and how you select things. But that really was an excellent feature of Lisboa, and so just to have a simpler game that you can just focus on that is really exciting. Should be really good.
It sounds great. And now that you've mentioned it, do you think that's basically his career plan? He's just going to take Lisboa and separate it into all
and just slowly break it. Here's a great successful game. I could make 5 smaller games out of this one. Oh, and he can go through all of his other games as well.
Yeah, do the same thing.
It's cunning. It is cunning. I think we'll see how well this one sells and then decide. Wait, are we on to number 1?
On to number 1.
What's your favourite game, Robin? What's the most exciting game in the world to you?
Soul Raiders.
Ooh.
Yes. 1 to 4 player game, and the designer is Marc-Andre, who also did Splendor.
Very good.
So frankly, that's enough to get me excited about what the game could be. But this actually looks like a really good game, and quite a departure as well. Not the follow-up I would have expected to Splendor. I would have thought maybe...
He's done other games since then.
I know.
Just no one played them.
That's true. So maybe this is the
Majesty. Everyone should play Majesty.
I don't think I've played
I want an expansion. It's so good. Anyway.
Well, another reason to get excited about Soul Raiders. But this game looks beautiful. Like, the artwork looks absolutely gorgeous. It's a fantasy setting, so it's elves, dwarves, goblins, demons, and all that kind of thing. But the artwork is absolutely fantastic, and it looks like it's a big box game. But it's a card-based game, not a miniatures game. But it's for a team of adventurers, up to 4, and it's a narrative-driven game, and it's designed to play, I think, 8 or 9 2-hour campaigns. Sorry, 2-hour missions.
That's quite the departure from the other games of his that I've played.
Yeah, exactly. His other games are not like that at all.
They're kind of classic, simple Euro games, pretty theme light, typically.
Yeah.
So this is going quite the opposite direction.
But what I like about it is that it claims to have over 1,000 cards in the base game.
What?
Yeah. 1,000 cards of enemies.
Sorry, are you sure this is the same designer?
Exactly. And it's got environment tiles. So instead of a board, you have landscapes like a forest, a hill, zone. But yeah, you just place your character on the landscape that they're going to, the tile, and then you play your cards, and the cards have powers. There must be an enemies deck, and there's, I think, an events deck, and
I imagine there are many, many decks if there's 1,000 cards.
Exactly. So
either that or they're very big decks.
Yeah. So that's the thing that surprised me. That it's a narrative-driven game, but it's got over 1,000 cards in the base game. So I'm intrigued to see, because to me, when you have that many cards, it's going to be a random experience, right? It's going to be...
Maybe, or it's a huge number of options, like, if you've got item, equipment, piles of different things you can have, and, maybe you have different cards for actions and stuff that you can change. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be that you never use more than 200 of those cards. It's just that the other 800 are there to give you the choice.
Just for ballast.
And I'm really intrigued to see how this goes. And it's...
Yeah, I mean, the question is always, is it quantity over quality? This is an established designer.
Exactly.
Proven. In a very different field. Oh my god, it could be amazing, or it could be a complete disaster. And exactly. I can see why it's exciting. It's so exciting. Which way is it going to go?
It is. It's so weird that he has come out with this, and he's the only credited designer as well. I genuinely assumed, he's working with 2 other people to make a game this big, but it's just him. And I don't understand how this has come about, but it's terrific, and I'm excited. And just one thing that I find possibly problematic about the game is that it says it's a smooth, swift playing experience. I think the cards are a big part of that. It's kind of like you can reveal cards and make decisions quite quickly, so there's no tricky mechanics to really wonder about. And it looks like combat is a fairly simple numbers thing about how strong you are.
It's not like a traditional dungeon crawl on a grid, right? It's regions. Exactly. Of, like, you're talking whole forest scale stuff happening, right?
Yeah. And
I think that would streamline a lot, because you don't have to worry about AI movement and range attacks and
there's no dice
all that
involved
stuff.
by the looks of things. So because of the different zones, players can act simultaneously. So there's no waiting for other players' turns. You just all do your actions all at once.
So if you're not in the same zone as someone else, or
exactly, if you're in different zones, you act completely independently. So it's a fully cooperative game in that sense, and I love that. I think that's a really cool idea. Except the minimum estimated playtime is still 2 hours per session.
So if it's not quite as streamlined as they claim, it could be very, very long. Okay.
It could be a very long game here. Yeah, and that might be brilliant, or it could be a drag. And I don't know which category this is going to fall into. So but it's exciting, and I must re-emphasize that it's mostly exciting.
That is the point of these videos. It's fine. We don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah. So what is your number one game?
Oh, here we go. Right. My number one game is Oath. Oh my goodness. It's fascinating. Like, it's not often that you see games come around that are really trying something comprehensively new.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, but Oath is one. So it's a big twist on the kind of legacy format and on civilization games, while doing something kind of academically intelligent and interesting. So what it is a study on the rise and fall of civilizations, but it's not the kind of 8-hour nonsense that Civilization, the actual board game of that name, can be. How it works, what it is. So it's it's hard to describe apparently. So what it's trying to do is, over the course of many games, showing how civilizations and dynasties, perhaps maybe is better, rise and fall within a society, in the same kind of geographical region. Kind of single country / empire kind of range. And so you might be in an empire, with some players being trying to rebel against the emperor, who is one of the other players, or you might be all kind of separate warlords in control of your own separate territory, possibly aiming to unify everything into your own empire type of thing. And importantly, the key to this, the legacy side of it, is that what happened in the game before sets up the starting conditions and kind of victory conditions and various other aspects of the next game you play.
Wow. That sounds cool.
Yes. So in your first game, you might be an empire, but one of the players decides to try and tear the empire down for a rebellion and succeeds, winning that game. And so the next time you're in a completely different societal structure, maybe you create there's a theocracy, or maybe who knows, maybe you become the emperor, and the next game you're playing as you win the kind of war in the previous game, you're now the emperor, and you can invite other players to side with you, or you have other players, and while leaving other players outside in the cold, kind of like beyond the borders of your kingdom or whatever. And then you're kind of playing two games at once. You're trying to keep the people the foreigners away, while also playing the political intrigue within the empire amongst the players there.
This sounds too good to be true. This sounds absolutely
it does,
amazing.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is, from the sounds of everything that I'm hearing about it, and it's been designed by Cole Worley, who has a phenomenal pedigree with very clever, very complicated kind of Euro games. So he did Pax Pamir, which honestly was, if I'd been able to play it more than once, I'm fairly certain would have been my game of 2019. It was phenomenal. And that is the kind of, it's studying the same kind of thing in one historical context, whereas this is trying to take the broader concepts and explore all of them at once, or how they interlink and how things change.
Yeah. And make your own history, essentially.
Exactly, yes.
Incredible idea.
Yeah, and so it has that kind of classic legacy game selling point of creating your own game.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone's game will be different. But this one doesn't actually do that through destroying components or permanently marking things.
Yeah.
So you can just reset the entire game back to square one if you want. And you don't have to have the same group of people playing through a campaign, to play through a campaign. You just play it. You just play it as a standalone game. But the outcome of that resets all the card decks in a specific way, so that you can then play it with completely different people. Because there's no through characters.
Just like you were saying about earlier, we just mentioned about scenarios where you end up playing the first couple of scenarios of a game again. Because you're introducing new players, but this completely avoids that.
Yeah, and so kind of as the owner of the game, you get this experience of seeing it change and evolve, but you can just bring people in to play a single game of it, and they can enjoy that game of it in its own context. It's a hugely ambitious game, but the designer has the pedigree to pull it off, and from everything I've been hearing, he has succeeded.
Oh man, could be on the brink of a new era then of legacy games. Is that what this promises?
Ooh, it could be, couldn't it? It could be. He also did Root, which is obviously hugely popular.
Yeah.
And if it's at a similar level to that, then that would be perfect, I think.
Oh, good first choice.
Before we bring this video to a complete close, any honourable mentions? So, Frosthaven, obviously, would have been on my list, absolutely, if I hadn't just picked up for Christmas the Jaws of the Lion set.
Okay.
So I've got my a nice 20 scenario campaign to play through. I am excited for Frosthaven in the general sense, but I know I don't need to pick it up for a long time. So
it's no longer anticipated.
So it's no longer a top 5 anticipated. And the other one was Ankh Gods of Egypt, the new
I almost
CMON.
picked that one, actually. Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't, actually.
I almost backed it.
Oh yeah, me too. But mostly just because of the miniatures.
Yeah.
The miniatures are so good, so good. But I kind of stopped backing for a little while. It's I love Blood Rage, and Rising Sun is just endlessly compelling. I don't like it.
Way of putting it.
I've got a love-hate relationship with Rising Sun.
Yeah.
I feel like I should hate it, but every time I play it, I do enjoy myself. And of course, I'm worried that we did both overlook a 2021 game though that I saw on the list called The Dirty Toilet Game. Quote from the BG, how the BGG has a little quote section to describe the game in just one line to appear on the lists and things. It's for people who can laugh at poop and plumbers with butt cracks.
I mean,
yeah, make sure you check that one out, everybody. I can only imagine it'll be complete shit.
Hey. Oh, this channel's going down the drain.
Oh yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, we'll pull the flush on this video. Everyone, please let us know what games you're looking forward to this year. Have you backed any of the ones we've mentioned? Because I imagine quite a few of them were Kickstarters.
Also, I want to know, vote for out of our choices, which ones are the most
Ooh.
anticipated, because I have a feeling Matt might have made a persuasive argument, but show Robin a little love.
Got to encourage Robin so he comes back again. If we can find ways of filming. Oh dear.
Yeah, it was going to be like this for a while. The good news is that I'm naked from the waist down, and that was something I couldn't do before.
That is a fabulous... Oh man, you have to go rewatch the video now and imagine that. Farewell everybody, we'll see you in the next video. Please make sure to give us a like and subscribe if you want to see anything else.
Share it with your friends.
Yay!
Have a happy 2021.